Since it's my birthday today, I decided to make this video too. My favorite anime characters from like every anime. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm taking an anime, right, and then like from that anime, who's my favorite character from that anime. Um, and I picked 26 different animes, 26 different characters that are my favorite from these animes, right? And it's close for some of these, anime are great and they have a lot of characters that I like, but I had to pick the one that was the best, you know. So in One Piece, it's obviously Luffy. You see me put on the attire every day. It's right there in your face like that. Dragon Ball Z, that's Vegeta. And Goku is, the main character. Gohan does his thing. You know, Piccolo is a guy that should get some credit too. But Vegeta's, you know, he's just great. He pushes Goku. Well, Goku really pushes him too. But he is a great character. He needs to get some more, you know, credit. When he first showed up, he was actually, fucking shit up too, like destroying people. And he can beat people who ain't the main villain, you know. If it ain't the main villain of that arc, he can kick some ass. But one day he needs to be able to have that shit handled himself. Or, like in Daima, he was able to finally unlock Super Saiyan 3. And I felt, really good for that. And he was the one who showed it first. Well, actually, he showed it second. I don't even know, because I haven't watched all of it. But I know that it's, Super Saiyan 3, is a thing. Um, Yu Yu Hakusho, I gotta go with the main character, Yusuke. Hiei and Kurama were right there too. Because I like them for certain reasons, but Yusuke is like, he's a half breed. He has the, Mazaku, so I'm like, yeah, I have to do that. For the half breeds out there. And then from Bleach, I got Kenpachi from Bleach. Ichigo is a great character, very powerful. Every time he fights, he destroys shit. And there's, and I never say about these, villains and shit, but some of these villains like Ukiura and Aizen are also, great characters too. Um, but Kenpachi's, always there. He always wins his fights. Well, except that one fight. But it was against, Juwa, Yuha, you know, Yuha. That guy is powerful, and, they had to plan strategies for this guy. Aizen had to, you know, he had to too. They knew about Kenpachi being the strongest Soul Reaper. He had to learn, from Unohana how to awaken his true power. And not hold back. You know, and that's what he did in 1,000 Year Blood War. The last season of it's gonna be pretty cool. Um, Naruto, I know it's named Naruto, but I'll tell you right now, Sasuke is my favorite character. Sasuke was that guy, like, that Naruto was trying to, like, I wouldn't say, in certain ways he was trying to emulate Sasuke, you know, being, like, because Sasuke was a good ninja. He was a great genin and shit before he left the village. And then, even after the time skip, he was still more powerful than Naruto until Naruto finally learned Sage Mode like Jiraiya. That was when shit turned in Naruto's favor, as it should have, because it's Naruto the series, right? It's not called Sasuke, but I still heat calls to Sasuke being my favorite character. And it was actually close between Sasuke or Obito, because I like Obito too, but Sasuke, I have to give it to Sasuke, because he's been there the whole time. And then when it comes to fairy tale characters, right? I like the main character Natsu. I like Gajio. I like Jalal, you know. But my favorite character is Laxus. Laxus is a powerful wizard from fairy tale. He does his job. He holds down. he had, he didn't view things the right way at the beginning, but then, he finally like where he is right now in the series. I wouldn't be surprised if they recommended him to be the guild master one like day if Makarov ended up dying, because he came a long way, like as far as character development goes. He ain't just trying to have strong people around him. He's there to protect the weak people because he is strong. So he's going to protect the weak people. And he makes sure he always does that. After that fight, battle of Fairy Tail, he was always there for the guild after that. He's a great guildmate and shit. That's all. And I like his power. He's very powerful too. And then as far as JJK goes, I got Sukuna. Sukuna is that character. For me, I read the manga, so some people who are anime onlys, and I am, talking only anime on here right now. But Sukuna is king for a reason. I'll tell you that right now. And that fight between him and Maharaga is, definitely worth, the watch. Rurouni Kenshin, it's Kenshin Himura, of course, the main character. Himura Kenshin. He holds back. He knows he can kill people, but he uses a Sakabatsu to fight. And it gives them a chance to, like, calm the fuck down and not. But then they, find his dick, and then he's just like, I have no choice. Not to hold down and shit like I always have. And that's why he always keeps it on him, too, because he knows that people know about him, and he knows that people will find his dick, and then he'll be like, I have to do this. Inuyasha, I got Sesshomaru as my favorite character. I like Inuyasha. He's a half-breed, and half-breeds, I like half-breeds. But Sesshomaru is more powerful than Inuyasha. If you ain't looking at, like at the end of the series and shit, he needs his brother's help, is what I'm saying. He can't do that shit by himself as far as defeating Naraku and all that goes. And Sesshomaru is just more, I don't know, not even cool. He does his own thing and he doesn't care about other people. If people get in his way, he'll dispose of them or he'll just dismiss them because they're weak. And then for Seven Deadly Sins, I got Meliodas himself as my favorite character. Meliodas has a good taste in women, unlike Bond. That basically became, because I like Bond too, but Meliodas has a better taste in women, so that's why I went towards Meliodas. And that, as it comes to that anime, and as it comes to like Cowboy Bebop, right? This is the 11th character, by the way. I'm trying to make this quick, but not too quick. Spike Spiegel is the best character in Cowboy Bebop. When you think of Cowboy Bebop, you don't think of Faye Valentine or Jet. You always think of Spike Spiegel. And that's me too. And then as far as Samurai Champloo goes, I'm for Mugen. I'm Team Mugen on that. Magi, I could have picked, the main character, or Alibaba, or Sinbad, or Hakuryu, but I'm gonna pick Judar. Judar's a Magi, but he's a Magi that uses Black Ruh. He could use the White Ruh and the Black Ruh. That's why I picked him. And he's powerful too. And then from Hunter x Hunter, it ain't any of the characters that are main characters. It's not Gon, it's not Killua, it ain't, anybody else but Isaac Netero. 100 type Guanine Bodhisattva, son. You gotta know about that. You Hunter fans. That's my favorite character from Hunter x Hunter. And then as far as, Demon Slayer goes, I give it to Tengen Uzui. He has the three wives, you know, and not just that, he uses his sword and he was able to take down one of the upper moons with help of Tandra. The other characters, the other Hashira haven't been seen enough, and I do like some of the other Hashiras too, but with the bitches on him and the two swords and like his flashiness, that's kind of what I have to be, a little more like him. Not too much, but a little more like Tengen. You know, I thought about Akaza as well, but I was like, not yet. You know, maybe next year I'll remake this video and say Akaza, but Tengen is my favorite character from Demon Slayer as of right now. Then I got from God of High School, I got Jin Mori. You know, Day Han. You know what happened to Day Han when he used the four, animals, the four sacred animals. Jin Mori tanked all that shit and was able to, fight against him. Because he's the Monkey King. Then from Pokemon, I might as well have a favorite character from that. And it's obviously Charizard, You thought I was going to say Ash or Brock or Pikachu or, one of them other people, but I was like, nah, Charizard. We'll stick with the Charizard. And then as it pertains to Yu-Gi-Oh, the Yu-Gi-Oh series, of course I have to go with the Pharaoh, Yami Yugi, Atem, of course. When he shows up, things get handled most of the time. Sometimes it don't, but it still works out in the end. And from the anime Bungo Stray Dogs, I got Dazai, Sama Dazai. He's my favorite character. Sama Dazai, he has the power to nullify everybody else's abilities if they get into his area. If they find his dick, then their ability ain't gonna work. They're trying to touch his ass, and it ain't gonna work. They better have hand skills too, and not just a special ability. And Daza ain't just that; he's smart too. He knows how to play games. Um, then when it comes to Avatar: The Last Airbender, I got Zuko as my favorite character. I like Aang too, but Zuko, like I said, he went through a lot of ups and downs. He went from hunting Aang's dick to protecting Aang, to being Aang's friend and firebender teacher. And understanding that it was always that was his goal always, or that was his destiny always, to become Aang's teacher, and teach him firebending because of his grandfathers. And then, that honor that he was after so much was not that. you know, he had to do all this and learn things along the way. It was just cool how that story ended up, being. I already have the story of Zuko on this channel. You gotta go watch that too. Um, but from that time I got reincarnated to slime, I got Diablo as my favorite character. When Diablo shows up, he's always doing work for Rimuru, and it's crazy too because really, Diablo shouldn't be serving somebody like Rimuru, but Rimuru has hacks, abilities to make an archdemon like Diablo he calls to him. He had just enough magical power to have Diablo well, I guess I can serve you because everybody else is weak, and I'll do whatever you need me to because he supplies Diablo with magic too, but Diablo has his own magic, and he's very powerful. Out of the archdemons, I think he is the most powerful one. And they're how does Rimuru have him under his command? This guy is, amazing. If he's in a fight with somebody in that verse, he's probably beating any of them. Unless it's Rimuru. Levi Ackerman from AOT, Attack on Titan. That's who I like. Beast Titan versus, Levi Ackerman. That fight is the best fight. That's why I like Levi. He's my favorite character from that um, anime. And I got another anime that people might not know about. It's called Lupin the Third. And my favorite character from that anime is Lupin the Third. You know, the best, you know, thief in all of anime, Lupin the Third. You know, and it was close between him and Goemon, but I had to give it to Lupin. You know, because the way he dresses and he gets the job done. When he has something on his mind, he wants to steal that object, he gets it. And then Zenigata's always on his dick, but he always evades Zenigata. Um, um, and then from Record Ragnarok, I got Buddha. He's my favorite character from that. He could have fought for the gods and easily put the gods over the humans, but he was like, you know what? I feel as though I need to fight for the humans. And it wasn't because any luck. Hell no, it's not because of I want to fight for the humans necessarily. Like I'm all gung ho about that. I feel that I should do that out of the goodness of my heart. That I need to do that for you guys. You know, I came up with that decision. It wasn't you making the decision for me. You know, and he handled shit against a, you know, demon from Helheim. Um, then at 25, I got, you know, my 25th character that I have picked out from One Punch Man is Garou. Garou the monster, you know. I like him. You know, he's kind of skewed in his way of seeing shit, but he also still kind of cares about people. He just didn't understand why people never understood his ways. You know, Garou likes to fuck shit up. You know, he doesn't like to be weak. You know, he showed that he could handle some S-class heroes, and not just heroes, but monsters too. You know, you'll find that out in season 3. Whenever that comes out. Yeah, I'm excited for that. And then speaking of season 3, and then Fire Force at 26. Because I'm talking about 26 characters today. My favorite characters from anime, and only 26 of them because I'm only 26. So Benimaru Shinmon is my favorite character from Fire Force. He's the strongest Fire Force captain. Um, when he comes through, they know that, you know, he's gonna fuck shit up. He has second and third generation fire powers. Yeah, so that was my favorite anime characters, you know, of all time. You know, and like 26 animes that I watch, you know, and that I love. You know, and I picked one from each anime. You know, to be fair to each anime. And I did that for my birthday. That's why I did only 26 characters. But stay cool, core on the corner.